Google Maps is an incredibly detailed capture of our planet Earth, which means, along with everyday life, it also has the potential to capture the strange and disturbing. Today, we'll be taking a look at Google Maps Japan, from otherworldly caves to abandoned liminal spaces. We'll be taking a look at everything in the form of an iceberg. These are the most disturbing things I found on Google Maps Japan, so let's just get straight into it. As we just discussed, Google Maps is a capture of the real world. Everything you see on Street View was really driven on and really captured by a human being. And so, with how grounded in reality that makes it, it becomes incredibly unnerving when you come across something like this. These were just coordinates to an unremarkable water tower next to the ruins of Japan's Nara dreamland. But what is this? Is it real, or why is Google Maps displaying this incredibly eerie image with what seems to be a strange figure as if it's a real location? Well, in the last days of March of 2022, someone posted a TikTok of themselves searching a set of coordinates on Google Maps in Japan. The same coordinates of our Nara dreamland. However, theirs looks a little different. What's here is this round room with a floor that seems to go on forever. It gained the nickname the Never-Ending Hole, and in 2022, these posts and clips were reposted thousands of times. And this was during the moment where the back rooms first started becoming popular. So interest in this case just kept growing, and investigations into just what was going on at Nara Dreamland began popping up. Now, the building or water tower or whatever this thing is real, and it does sit next to where Nara Dreamland used to be. The park opened in 1961 as Japan's answer to Disneyland, complete with its own castle modeled after Sleeping Beauty's, and it unfortunately closed in 2006 after losing crowds to Disney Tokyo. Now, it sat empty for almost a decade before the city finally decided just to auction off the land. Demolition started in October of 2016 and finished the next year, December 2017. So by the time this video went viral, the amusement park itself had already been gone for years. But the building people were clicking into was actually never part of Nara Dreamland itself. This is a separate structure that just so happens to stand next to an empty lot right next to Nara Dreamland. Are you bored of mindlessly opening and closing the same games and apps, just trying to find something new to play? Well, what if I told you there's a free-to-play game that you can download right now with tons of content? And if that sounds good, well, keep listening to the end because I also have some free stuff for this game. And I'm not talking about a couple coins or useless starter items. I'm talking about 3 legendary champions and a powerful epic with insanely cool designs. Raid has just launched its brand new Echoes of Oz event, which takes characters inspired by the Wizard of Oz and turns them into these darker fantasy champions. Dorothy Gale with her dog Toto and her friends Scarecrow, Tin Woodman and the Cowardly Lion once defeated the Wicked Witch. But her secret protege, Azilda, has been quietly plotting revenge ever since, and now she's pulling them all back into Oz. But the best part is that during the event, you can get legendary champion Dorothy Gale completely for free by just logging in for 7 days. Dorothy can remove buffs from enemies, apply debuffs, and control the opposing team. She also becomes even stronger when you use her alongside more of the Friends of Oz champions. So if you're like me and enjoy building themed teams that also look pretty cool, then you actually get rewarded for it. There's also a limited time event dungeon where you can take on Azilda the Wicked and earn special chronophage gear and other rewards. One thing I love most about Raid is that you can play it on your home computer or play on your phone while traveling from work to school, and since it's available on both desktop and mobile, it's one of those games I can just chill out and play wherever I am, meaning that lately it's actually become my go-to. One of the champions who immediately stood out to me was Alice the Wanderer. I've always loved the Alice in Wonderland aesthetic, and Raid's version gives her this really detailed fantasy design, along with a cute white rabbit strapped on her back. I genuinely love the overall vibe and how the game looks. This is a mobile game with AAA style graphics, it's just insane. Now for that free stuff I promised. Download Raid using my link in the description or scan the QR code on screen and you'll instantly unlock a starter pack containing the legendary champion Narma the Returned. You can then use one of 4 promo codes within 48 hours of downloading with my link to choose another free legendary champion. That's GETALICE for Alice the Wanderer, KITTYCUT for the Cheshire Cat, SUPERVICTORY for Pelops the Victor, or Wrath for the Grand Oak Padridge. You can only redeem one of them, and personally I'd choose Alice. She has the coolest design in my opinion, and she can stop enemies from using some of their strongest skills, so If you like cute and strong, that's the way to go. Then log in for 7 days to claim Dorothy Gale and reach level 15 to unlock the epic champion Chonoru. That's 3 legendary champions, 1 epic champion, and a load of extra rewards, all for starting through my link. Using my link also directly supports me and the channel, so click below or scan the QR code and try Raid Shadow Legends. What's going on here? Dreamland itself is real, the building is real, but what about the images of supposedly what's inside? Well, reporters at the Daily Dot traced the interior shot back to an alternate reality game built around a recurring character called Billy Lee Robot, played by a YouTuber who turns up in character inside user-uploaded photospheres at real coordinates around the world. See, Google Maps lets anyone attach their own 360-degree photo to a real-world location, and that's what happened here. Maybe that's not as interesting. I mean, it could have been a visual glitch. The one I found to this day is a bit more believable, being how dark it is, but the original Nara Dreamland revealing Japan's secret bottomless pit is just a bit too far-fetched. So this is just someone's ARG, but I do think it's an incredibly interesting one, and I do wonder what else is hiding on Google Maps just waiting to be found. On top of a building in Japan, you may be shocked to see what looks like a person staring aimlessly off the roof. It's insanely creepy, and from this angle, it almost looks as if they're hiding, just halfway out of sight from behind that pillar. This is something that if you just so happen to accidentally come across on Google Maps, it would probably leave you pretty freaked out. Just who on earth is up on top of this building, seemingly trying to hide out of sight of the Street View car? Well, upon further investigation, we can find that there are photos of this thing dating back as far as 2009, and they give us a much closer look at what we're dealing with here, and that is a mannequin. But that leaves us with a new question. Why would someone put a mannequin on top of a rooftop in the first place? And why do it in such a creepy manner? But that is actually the reason it's up there at all, to creep people out. See, the building is actually a tourist attraction, and I know that's not as disturbing, but we will get to the real weird stuff later. But this is Fuji-Q Highland's Labyrinth of Fear. It's a haunted manor type attraction and one of the largest in the world. For fun, they decided to put a mannequin up on top of the building, just to scare some people as they walk by. But what is really lame and annoying about this is that Google actually blurred it in updated Google Maps view. I don't know who at Google decided this no fun allowed policy, or if this is a new AI blurring algorithm that detected it as a person, whereas the old one didn't. I don't know. But if someone at Google went out of their way to blur it after people noticed it and started talking, that is super lame. While we're on the topic of Google's blur system, it actually brings us nicely to our next entry. See, it's this blur system that is made to target human faces, human bodies, etc., that left a lot of the internet users wondering about strange blurs that keep appearing at haunted locations. As if Google detected multiple faces and blurred them where there actually shouldn't be anything to blur at all. This sparked some debates online about whether or not this was something supernatural, and I initially wasn't really fazed with this blurring deal until I saw this. A random road in the middle of Japan's countryside with absolutely nothing else around, and something is standing here. Something strange enough that Google decided it needed blurred. Now, I tried to get other angles of this. I tried going down the road and looking back, and I thought that it was some wood that just got mistaken for a human, but when I go back up the road, the wood is clearly next to the blurred thing, and when I go back up the road and look down, that doesn't seem to reveal anything either. It's like, for one mere moment in time, there was something here, and the next, it just wasn't. It really does look like there's something here that's being blurred as opposed to just an accidental random blur. One of my friends said it looked like a giant mushroom, but whatever it is, I find it far more disturbing than the first one. And I decided to try investigate some more to understand why this happens in the first place. Now, all I found was more information regarding the first haunted spot, and that what's happening here is Google's AI mistaking this yellow part of the bridge for a license plate and just applying the blur effect. But as for a random square, nothing. In fact, it's more in line with the mannequin blur from the previous entry that there was really something here, potentially something that resembled a human, which caused the blur. Or there's a giant mushroom here. But as far as blurs go, this one is just incredibly strange. Nami sits on Fukushima's coast, about 8 kilometers from the Daiichi nuclear plant. After the reactors melted down in March of 2011, all 21,000 residents had to evacuate, and the town never really came back. Now, don't get me wrong, very sparingly parts have reopened, but for the most part, this is a town sitting exactly as it was left. 2 years after the disaster, in March of 2013, Nami's mayor Tamo Tsubaba invited Google to Nami. The plan was for Google to drive their Street View cameras through the empty streets. This way, you could have a permanent record for future generations to be able to walk through the town instead of just reading about it. The crew that filmed it wore protective gear and kept their radiation exposure monitored the whole time, which is a strange thing to picture. People suited up, driving down a quiet street, taking pictures for Google Maps. But I kinda really like that, because what you're clicking through and viewing here is something you're actually not allowed or somewhere you really shouldn't go. And for the most part, this place is completely inhabitable. But it's due to this that I think it feels rather easy to completely forget about the Google car, and just while you're clicking through Nami, to feel completely alone. As I was clicking through this, I found this area on Street View. This stretch of road near the coast where the horizon just seems to disappear into the fog, and we're left with this landscape of boats and debris pulled kilometers inland from Ukedo Harbor. And because nobody was ever allowed back to move them, they've just kinda stayed here. This is quite easily one of my favorite liminal spaces on Google Maps. It's just quite eerie and strange. Sometimes it's like there's no greenery and then you click forward and suddenly everything's become overgrown and there's just something quite magical about it. And even going back to Nami's town hall, you can see it sits empty with these fire trucks still parked inside, right where they were in March of 2011. You can look through the windows of the shops and houses along the main street, and you'll find drinks still stacked in vending machines and some clothes still hanging up in display cases. I've always liked the old concept or trope of the town that stepped out for a minute and never came back. It just makes for a really nice, mysterious atmosphere, and the reason clicking through this feels like a liminal space is because comparatively to the rest of the cities on Google Maps, here, in Nami, you really are entirely alone. The Oyama Park Cave first appeared in a Japanese blog post with just a screenshot of Google Maps Street View of this strange cave in the side of a mountain, going on to describe how it had been hand dug out by someone and the inside depicted a world representing heaven and hell. This took my interest immediately and I decided to try find it myself on Google Maps, and sure enough, it's real, here it was. We're just in this incredibly serene area with what seems to be a statue of some sorts and a waterfall. We're really off the trail here, just basically in the middle of nowhere on some side road in the mountains, and someone has decided to hand dig out a cave. The Street View only takes us so far, but it makes one wonder what's going on with this cave and what on earth is inside. These are the photos of the inside. There's these creepy derelict statues and it almost looks eroded and decayed in here. I mean, I guess it would, it's borderline abandoned, right? But why? What on earth is all this stuff and why the hell is it in here? Well, it turns out this cave is registered to a company called Fuji-Q and was actually built in 1976. The cave was a personal gift to the company's president, a man named Kenji Yamaguchi, to mark his 60th birthday. The tunnel was just straight cut into the bedrock and left basically raw rather than reinforced, and it was laid out like a maze, and once you paid to get in, it split into two halves, a hell tour and a heaven tour. So you have this labyrinth-like place in this really bunk maze that's more like a labyrinth, and it's just a little scary. I mean, according to the report, they didn't even reinforce it. This is literally just sitting here, hand dug out as it was in 1976. It's a miracle it hasn't collapsed by now, but assumingly they know what they're doing. But that being said, apparently this has been abandoned since 2014, with people who like exploring abandoned places going up to the gate to find it locked. However, the ticket booth wasn't, which allowed them to just go inside basically, unlock the gate from the ticket booth. On the counter was an old newspaper from January 1st, 2004, which is over a decade out of date even then. It seems it's just been completely left alone, just left to decay in the mountains, and no one's been there since the early 2000s. It's a really weird thing to find on Google Maps and then to go search up about, wondering what's behind the gate, and you just see all this weird depictions of whatever the hell it's supposed to be. So yeah, this is just an incredibly strange, defunct tourist attraction that has just sat left alone for over 2 decades almost. Quite some years ago on 2channel, there was a copypasta going around titled something like Scary Places on Google Maps. It's been circulating since at least 2010, and it's basically just a list of coordinates, and each one has a short title telling you what happened there. It's usually along the lines of something creepy or something with a dark history, like an accident happened there or it's supposedly haunted, etc. So all the coordinates on this list point to somewhere with some kind of significance, all apart from one. There's one which simply translates to "please understand," and upon opening the coordinates in Google Maps, we can see nothing. It just appears to be some normal side street of some small local business. Your first thought would be to check for criminal history here, but that turns up nothing too. Every other coordinate on this list tells you exactly what you're supposed to be afraid of here, exactly why something is scary. But what does "please understand" mean? I mean, it roughly translates to "you can figure this out yourself. Please understand, you can figure this out yourself." So that's what users online began doing. The most popular theory came from a post on a Japanese Q&A site. Someone claimed that the address matched a branch office of Chongryon, which I don't know how to pronounce, sorry, but which is an organization that basically acts as North Korea's unofficial representative body in Japan, essentially insinuating that this is some secret spy base. However, the problem is that this isn't actually true, and the branch in question was actually listed at a completely different address. So the coordinate probably isn't pointing at some hidden North Korean facility. At most, it's pointing to a plot where an office used to be for them, but I don't know, this one doesn't really hold much substance. Now, the other theory regarding this entry is actually that this is more of a personal grudge. This facility is actually tied to a demolition company. So the current theory is that this is some personal grudge between the person who originally made the list and this demolition company. You can assume that perhaps this company were hired to demolish something, and that has affected the person who made the list. But we won't really get an explanation because the original post has actually never been found, so nobody can say for certain what the explanation is and which one of these is true, or if neither of them are at all. And I know that's not the most satisfying thing, but I suppose this is just one of those mysteries that probably won't ever get solved. Here we are on the back roads of Nagano. You may think that this is just a normal back roads on Google Maps, but what's strange about this one is that in every single image on this road, the street view seems to capture a woman standing with her back turned, following the camera everywhere it goes. Upon first clicking in here, it's almost like she jump scares you, and she just keeps following you every time you click down this road. It's incredibly disturbing. The first thought upon seeing this is that this creepy lady is following the poor Google car around, or whoever's taking the pictures for Google. She's just stalking them down this desolate mountain road. But actually, that's not the case, because there's a detail here that explains basically what's going on that most people miss, and it's that these images weren't taken by Google Streetcar View at all. And if you check the imagery, it was actually uploaded by an ordinary user. Google has a feature that basically lets anyone shoot their own 360-degree photos and link them together into Street View. It's basically what we discussed in the first entry. So someone drove up or walked to this mountain road and took panorama after panorama, then stitched them together into the map themselves. And once you know that, it basically makes more sense that this woman appearing in every photo is in every photo because she's the one shooting them. And obviously she doesn't want her own face in something that's basically going on to the internet, even if Google will censor it. Even knowing that explanation doesn't make it any less creepy. And I'm still not over that initial jump scare that I got when I turned the camera around, and there she was. She almost looks like she's straight out of The Ring, just black hair over her face. It's just like she's a cursed ghost. This is the cursed Google Maps. If you watch it in 7 days, you'll die. On a quiet road in the mountains of East Koriyama City, Fukushima, there's a heavy iron gate standing at the edge of the woods. It's rusted, completely painted red, and written across it is the phrase, "No one may enter." Now, obviously, there are do not enter signs everywhere, and they're pretty normal, but what's strange about this one and how it got attention was the phrasing. It's very strictly, entry is completely forbidden to absolutely anyone without exception. And it's the sort of thing you may expect to see on some sort of government facility or really important, tight-knit military installation place. However, this is a fence in the middle of nowhere, some rural farmland. There's literally nothing here that you can see, as the overhead satellite view makes it pretty clear that this entire area is hidden by trees. Whatever is in there is being kept out of sight from the satellite view. If you go to Google Maps and look at this yourself, you can see that Street View passes from 2022 and 2023, and it shows the area behind the gate completely overgrown. It's not really something you would expect. For 2 years, it appears that no one has gone in there. The only cutting away of the trees is to sort of stop this farmland here, but the actual trees inside the place are completely overgrown to the point where it doesn't even look like you can get in. The path inside, just you can't get in there. However, if you go back to 2013, it's entirely different. This is the earliest picture of this, and there is a distinct path going in. The trees aren't out of control and the fence is clearly maintained. It looks like a place that's actively being used, so somewhere between now and then, whoever was using this place simply stopped. And this is also why I believe that this isn't directly tied to the farmland right next door, because the farmland is clearly upkept. However, the area of the gate isn't. And it's almost like two neighbors sharing a hedge. You might cut your side of the hedge, but leave the other side up to the neighbor. And that's what this looks like. Now, could this just be some mundane fence? Yeah, but it is a little ominous, this entirely red gate just with government-issued warnings on it, like no one may enter without a pass. It's a pretty ominous find if you were just scrolling around on Google Maps or even walking there like some blog posters who were going around and taking pictures of cherry blossoms and stumbled upon this gate. The owner of this property has never been identified, and nobody knows why the sign uses such extreme wording. Nagoro is a tiny settlement in the mountains of Tokushima Prefecture, deep in the Iya Valley. And if that Iya Valley sounds familiar, it should, because it's the same remote valley where the Oyama Park cave from early in this video is located. Two creepy, weird places in the same damn valley. That is so strange. When you're here and you're clicking through in Google Maps, it's quite easy to look around and see that there's some people here. I see people sitting down and maybe enjoying a picnic, or sitting or standing by the edge of the road, like a farmer wearing farmer's hats and all sorts. But when you get a lot closer, you realize that something's a little strange here. The people don't seem quite shaped right, almost a little aloof, a little off. And as you look around, you start to realize that these actually aren't people at all, but scarecrows, with some even having faces painted onto them, and Google even blurring some of their faces. It's kind of funny. The story behind this case is pretty well documented, and to be honest, it's one of the more known things on this list that I'm sure a lot of people were expecting. If you're not familiar, Nagano used to be home to around 300 people, but today less than 30 remain, most of them being elderly. It's what Japan calls a village on the edge, meaning on the edge of extinction. As most young people leave the countryside for the cities to start families and get work and money, they actually don't end up coming back to the countryside ever. So a lot of these villages are kind of just left to rot. The dolls here are the work of one woman, Tsukimi Ayano. She grew up in Nagoro and moved away to Osaka like almost everyone else, but then returned in 2002 to look after her aging father. The next year, she made her first scarecrow to keep the birds off her field, and she modeled it after her own father. But then something odd happened. Neighbors walking past would actually greet it, thinking it was actually him, and someone was working in the field early in the morning. She found that quite funny and actually a little comforting, so she kept going. She started making dolls of former residents, or even some of her neighbors who had died or people who had moved away, using these scarecrows to fill in the gaps of the villagers who'd ended up leaving, and now more than 2 decades later, there are over 350 of them, with some recent counts putting it closer to 400, all placed around the village, just doing real things the residents used to do. The village even keeps a registry for them, with each doll's name, age, and backstory being recorded. It's kind of pretty cool. The local elementary school actually closed in 2012 when its last 2 students graduated. But today, its classrooms are filled with scarecrow children sitting at the desks with a scarecrow teacher at the front of the room. And now once a year on the first Sunday of October, the village actually holds a scarecrow festival. So at first glance, what might seem pretty creepy, once you've actually learned the backstory, it's kind of pretty sweet. A lot of tourists have come to visit the village to see the dolls. And it's actually done wonders for the local population, giving them people to talk to and to interact with. And it just helps keep people's spirits high, as a lot of elderly people don't really have anyone to talk to. It's kind of amusing to me how the thing on this list that is outright immediately creepy is actually the sweetest thing. Like, this is the most in-your-face thing you can see on Google Maps on this list, probably. And it's actually the nicest one. It's just real sweet. In the mountains of Okayama Prefecture, on a side road between Soja City and the town of Yakage, there's a building that just really sticks out like a sore thumb. There's this small, collapsing shack, and every surface of it is just covered in antennas. There's just junk sprouting off in every direction. Part of the building itself seems held up by car tires. There's just sheet metal as the walls, frying pans hanging off the dishes. It looks like something out of Mad Max, to be honest. And it's just even stranger that it's just sitting here on some random roads in the middle of nowhere. Now, realistically, this is probably just someone's homeless, I don't know, structure. I'd say homeless shelter, but it doesn't even look like it gives much of that, because it's basically falling apart. The building is thought to date back to around the 1980s or later, and by the time the 2000s came around, it was already abandoned, or at least it looked like it. It's been a minor famous weird spot in Japan since at least 2009 when it started circulating on Japanese blogs. And it's basically locally well known enough that residents of the area recognize it by name. There's supposedly more of these buildings, but I went all the way to the edge of this road and I didn't find anything else. So if there's more buildings, you can't see them on Google Maps. There's one comment from a user who claims he does package deliveries in that area, and according to him, the owner is simply an old man whose hobby is collecting scrap, which is pretty eccentric, sure, but harmless. And the reason for all the antennas specifically is because getting a TV signal out here is kinda hard, so the more antennas, the more chance something hits. But overall, it is quite a creepy sight to randomly come across. This is a completely abandoned religious compound sitting in the residential neighborhood near Sakaide City in Kanagawa Prefecture. What we see from street view is just this place covered in weird graffiti with like all-seeing eye type stuff on it, and it's just really weird. For the longest time, this was assumed to be the abandoned headquarters of a previous cult. There's weird symbols on top of the building and a strange statue, and the street view camera actually has some weird artifacting. It just seems so out of place on this seemingly well-kept road, this abandoned cult headquarters. Reportedly, the cult this belonged to wasn't some doomsday operation or anything, but just a pretty mundane cult, and after the founder died, it just fell apart. The cult was ordered to dissolve because it really had no standing anymore, and now all their facilities just sort of sit and rot. It really does look like something out of a horror movie, with all the graffiti, all the overgrowth on the building, and just how menacing it looks. But actually, it's not quite what it seems. But while I was on the topic of cults, it got me interested in investigating other cult buildings that appear on Google Maps. And what I found is something a little interesting. That some cult buildings are actually removed from Google Maps altogether. Honohana Sampogyo was a religious group founded by a man calling himself Fukunaga Hogen. Now, I am going to do an entire video on Japanese cults, where I talk about these guys in particular, because these guys are the foot fetish cult. They would examine the soles of your feet and read your fate from them, and that is some crazy stuff. But anyway, the part about Google Maps with them is that Fuji Tensei Village is their compound that is completely gone from Google Maps. By the time their cult faded out, their entire compound actually was demolished. And in accordance with something, Google has removed it from the map entirely. So unless you knew that this headquarters that once had tens of thousands of followers and nearly $1 billion in stolen money even existed in the first place, you'd have no idea it was there at all. So we've looked at a cult compound that is completely abandoned. What about a cult compound that you can actually go inside of with Street View? Happy Science is a Japanese religious movement founded in 1986 by a man named Okawa Ryuho, and it is very much still active today. The organization calls itself a religion. However, a lot of critics and journalists and a long line of former members call it what it is, a cult. And even if you didn't believe those former members, the loudest of them all is Okawa's own eldest son, who publicly broke with the group and spent years denouncing his father's work. You guys are gonna hate me, but I genuinely cannot say this with a straight face. I can't talk about what this cult is without laughing. Okawa, the leader of the cult, said that he was the incarnation of a supreme spiritual being called El Cantare. And over his lifetime, he published an almost unbelievable number of books. And these books are like interviews with the dead, like he's summoning people like Michael Jackson. This is just the stupidest thing ever. But what is really interesting about this cult and what it is that Happy Science actually runs its own schools, which I know is terrible. You're indoctrinating children at a young age, but it actually allows us to see inside of what's going on in these buildings. And that's what I was shocked to see when I went to the facility on Google Maps, that I can go inside. Clicking around it feels like some sort of liminal space. I mean, we're looking through a school that has absolutely no people. The front entrance of the building, this courtyard area, there's no cars, there's literally nobody here. And then inside the building itself, just again, there's absolutely no one. The classrooms are completely empty, and then finally, after going through these completely desolate hallways, we get to this. Some sort of chapel room with just empty seats everywhere. I mean, it's normal for a school to have a chapel, I know, but knowing that this is a total bullshit cult, and then seeing a chapel in here with these like religious logos on it, it's really strange. And it makes exploring the rest of the building just a whole lot weirder, when you know at any turn you could see some weird religious cult stuff. To me, this is the strangest entry on this list. The fact that a full cult building is available for exploration on Google Maps is just really strange. And I know I made a joke of this cult earlier. It is ridiculous, but that doesn't change the fact that what we're walking through here is a real cult building. These videos take quite a lot of effort to make, so if you want to support me in what I do, you can simply do that by checking out Raid Shadow Legends. By making this sponsor a success, it opens the doors to more and allows me to keep making videos. I know the game gets a lot of flack online, but I genuinely tried it, and I'm not messing with you, it was a lot more fun than I expected. So if you want to support me for free and maybe find a new game you like, the Raid Shadow Legends link is below. Thank you for making it this far, and I love you guys.